How fast can I ride 100 miles? I'm around a couple of hours in and I'm starting to pay the price for a pretty silly mistake.
Headwind at the back, man, it's brutal.
Good morning, and we're back at the historic Goodwood Motor Circuit for take 2 of How Fast Can I Ride 100 Miles. I first attempted this about three and a half months ago, and I've trained solidly ever since. So this would be a really good test to see how much faster I am after training 20 hours a week roughly all winter long. I'm feeling pretty nervous, so let's just see. Conditions wise, the weather's largely the same, although as you can probably see from the flags, it's windier. Got a pretty stiff northeasterly wind, so it's going to be cold and I'm going to have headwinds in different parts of the race course. I'm on the same bike. It's my S-Works Tarmac SL7. This thing is far quicker than my Mason. It doesn't have aero bars. I never had aero bars last time, so it's a fair test. I've got all of my fuel with me, 4 bottles, so I'm going to try and stash 2 bottles somewhere on the side of the course to stop me having to come in. All of my food I'm going to keep in my pockets and my bib shorts. And the plan is to ride roughly 21 miles per hour average, maybe more, maybe less, let's see, for 5 hours or less. Thought I'd have a little sit down, postpone the inevitable a little bit, trying to walk around, get a bit of B-roll, chat to a few people. Mostly, just want to make sure I get all of the pee out. I think that's the biggest factor this time. The last time I attempted this, I didn't stop for a second. So 1 pee break is going to make a really big difference. You've got to come right off the track, around the back of the grandstand to the toilets, and rejoin. You can't just nip off. So potentially, if I need to go for a pee, I'm probably going to lose 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going to wander around until I'm pretty sure I'm all empty, and then get cracking. I'm going to go for one last little wander around now, dump my stuff, and then just get started.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, here we go.
And the pain train has left the station. Here we go for 5 hours of sting. And as always, if you're interested in ultra cycling related videos, then subscribe below and follow the channel along. So I focused on 100 miles as a goal here, as we may be European in the UK. We don't use metric on our roads. So as far as century rides go, 100 miles is the benchmark. And being an ultra cyclist, a 5-hour test every so often seems like a pretty good goal. I do have a lot less to focus on this time, as I did the very same test 4 months ago. So getting started, my main focus is just not going out too hard out of the gates. Although it's pretty exciting getting started. Last time I remember going straight up to almost 180 beats per minute before settling at around 160 beats per minute for the rest of the whole ride. And this time I'm doing a much better job of sitting at 160 beats per minute from the get-go. So maybe I'm learning a bit of discipline. And on top of that, I'm sitting at a faster speed than last time for the same beats per minute. So that's really encouraging. Nutrition wise for this test, I'm doing the exact same as last time, as it worked really well then. I'm supported by Velo Forte and I use their bars mostly. They give me around 40 grams of carbs per bar, so I eat one of those every 40 minutes or so. That gives me around 60 grams of carbs per hour. That seems to work really well for me on a training session as long as this one. Luckily, I can carry all of that in my cargo bib pockets, so fingers crossed, no stoppage for this whole ride.
About half an hour in so far, a little bit out of breath, but then I'm riding at tempo, so trying to maintain 160 beats per minute. Wind is absolutely raging, but let's see. So far, at tempo heart rate, I'm maintaining about 21.5, roughly. We'll see how long that holds up for, because Going to feel a lot better in the first half an hour than I would in the last half an hour. But the conditions are not great. It's pretty quick through the finish straight. As soon as you're through that, raging winds through most of the course. This back section of the course, usually with a southwesterly wind, you get lovely tailwind. Right now, battling headwind, and it's freezing. Wish me luck.
Goodwood Motor Circuit's perfect for this kind of test, so even though I've got a 24-hour time trial in less than a week, this seemed like the ideal time to tackle this. It's only open to bikes occasionally. It does have the potential to be pretty busy, but then it's a 2.5 mile race circuit closed to cars for 6 hours, and usually with southwesterly winds it flows really well. As you can see, it's pretty busy today and some pretty interesting vehicles out on the circuit. So at this point, I'm around a couple of hours in and I'm starting to pay the price for a pretty silly mistake. You'll see I start to realise this, but as I do this voiceover I can tell you, picking up my aggressive bike after not riding it for 4 months and tearing around for 5 hours was never going to be pain free. At this point, I'm starting to be plagued with a lot of lower back pain, so with several hours to go, that's less than ideal. Training wise, I came into this with quite a lot of training in my legs. The previous Sunday, I rode to London and back. That's a 150 mile round trip alone. I had a catch up with my coach Giovanni this week and realised that since we started working together, I've actually trained on the bike to some degree every single day for 104 days in a row by this point. I'm kind of surprising myself that I'm feeling really good going into these races this week. It just goes to show that if you balance the strain and the recovery well, then training every day doesn't need to be detrimental to your training plan.
It's getting painful now. 2 hours 45 minutes in. I spent the last hour managing lower back pain. Everything from my lower back down is really hurting for some reason. So having to balance pushing and keeping the heart rate up and the pain in my lower back. And this wind is just demoralizing me. Not doing too badly, but not as well as I'd like. Just feels like the wind is getting me for about 2/3 of the course. It's absolutely demoralizing, horrible. So it should be less than 5 hours. I don't know if you can even hear me. So probably about 2 hours-ish left. This is tough today. Much worse conditions than last time. Going quicker so far, but then that may be why my back is hurting. Wish me luck, folks. Almost. I'm about 88 miles in now and maybe about 5 laps left, so I'm quite looking forward to not having to push through this headwind at the back anymore. 5 more times. Man, it's brutal. And my back doesn't help that I haven't ridden this bike since the last time I did this test, which was maybe 3-4 months ago. I think that's probably why my back is hurting. But my lower back is constantly sore. So I'm just having to push as much as I can to keep the heart rate up and then ease off when my back is too painful. It's going quicker than last time so far, but not by a huge amount. I can't wait for this wind to be gone. It is killing me. Wind is crazy. 3 laps. Oh man, get me off this bloody bike. Two laps to go. I'd love to say I'm going to empty the tank now, but to be completely honest with you, it's pretty bloody empty already. 2 laps. I can do this now. Starting to feel a little bit less miserable. Whew. Well, that, as they say, is that. That one really hurt. I don't know if you can see the microphone that I use now is really good for blocking out wind noise. I don't know how much of this wind it's cutting out, but believe me, the back end of this circuit is brutal. This was really challenging. Right now, I don't know if I'm ever going to do something like that again. And I've got a 24-hour time trial next week, so I think I'll be taking it much easier. But it kind of makes sense. This week, I'm on a bike that is much more aggressive. I haven't ridden it for 3 or 4 months, and I'm pushing as hard as I can for 5 hours rather than Zone 2 endurance, which I know I can do for a long time. As for pushing hard for 5-6 hours, I think maybe I might have a little bit of a break because I'm going to be slightly traumatized from this one. I'm just rolling around the course now, cooling down. I'm going to pick up my bottles, which I've been chucking over here, grab my bottles, get my stuff, start heading home. It's a really cool place though. If you're ever anywhere near Goodwood and the South Coast, then look on the website, because every so often when there's no motor racing on, they open the whole racetrack up for up to 500 cyclists. And today there were about 350, 400. Bonkers. But it's so cool. Anyway, I think I'm going to roll back to the finish, get my stuff, and then we'll go through some of the numbers shortly. Knackered. It's been a few days since the ride now, and if you made it to this point, then thanks a lot for sticking around. I guess the whole point of this, how fast can I ride 100 miles? Was I faster this time? Long story short, yes I was. Am I happy with the result? Reasonably.
I do feel like I left some crumbs on the table this time, and I'll get into exactly what I mean by that. But essentially, I managed to ride once again all the way through with zero stoppage, unless you count that little foobar with a water bottle, and I finished in 4 hours and 55 minutes. That is 16 minutes faster than the last time I did this 4 months ago. So while I am pretty pleased with getting under 5 hours, I do think I could have gone a little bit faster. As you've seen, the strategy of picking this bike up after not riding it for 4 months didn't really pay off very well. Last time I did this test, I'd ridden this bike all through the summer. I mostly ride my Mason still in the summer, but I had ridden this a fair bit. It's a summer bike really, so while I'm never going to be perfectly adapted to that bike, I'm going to be much better adapted to it at the end of the summer season than I am picking it up after 4 months of nothing. So I think that's why my lower back and my glutes were getting pretty sore, and several days after the ride, my glutes are still sore now. Pacing wise, based on the previous attempt at this, I knew I could sustain around 160 beats per minute for the whole thing. I did it last time. So when I say crumbs left on the table, the first hour and a half or so, I managed to sustain 160 beats per minute roughly, and was averaging 21.5 miles per hour, there or thereabouts. If I'd have been a bit more intelligent and adapted to this bike a bit more before I did the test, I could have maintained 160-ish beats per minute for the whole thing and finished quite a bit quicker. Last time I did the test, 160 beats per minute roughly equated to 19.3 miles per hour average across the whole thing. This time I averaged about 150 beats per minute, and that equated to 20.3 miles per hour. Bear in mind I don't have a power meter on my bikes out on the road. I'm basing my pacing on heart rate, but I think if I could have maintained 160-ish beats per minute all the way through, then 21.5 miles per hour would have been achievable. And I'm pretty happy with that. I think that shows a big improvement in the last 4 months since I've been training every day. The previous time I attempted this, the weather was much better. Still a bit chilly. It was towards the end of the summer season, but I had the classic southwesterly wind. You're sheltered mostly as you climb up towards the back, and then a lovely tailwind all the way along quite a bit of the course. This time I was battling a headwind for most of the course. It was just demoralising. So while I said at the end I don't think I'm going to do this again anytime soon, I feel like I kind of need to do it at some point. The conditions are the conditions, you can't really help that. But if I give myself a bit of time to adjust to the position of this bike, I'm pretty sure I can maintain 160 beats per minute for the whole 5 hours or less. Either way, it might not have gone completely to plan. It's a really great test, and I'm pretty pleased with the results. So moving forward now, in a couple of days, I've got a 24-hour time trial out in the Cotswolds in the UK. So if you're not already subscribed, then subscribe and follow along, and let's see how that goes. And also, when I said I caught up with Giovanni recently and had a catch up with him, we talked about doing a video answering people's questions, because a couple of people I speak to in the comments had questions and I asked him about them recently, and we thought, why not make a whole video with questions and answers for aspiring ultra cyclists. I'm not an expert myself, but he won the Race Across America in the relay category, so I think we all have a lot to learn from Giovanni. Anyway, I'm rambling on, this summary is long enough as it is. So if you made it this far, really appreciate you watching. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you all next time.